Hey guys, tonight we descend into the smoke-choked chamber, where faith meets fear, and mercy doesn't make it through the door. The medieval exorcism. You've probably imagined it. Priests with crosses, shouting prayers, battling demons in the name of salvation. But the truth was far uglier. They didn't see illness. They saw invasion. Did you twitch during Mass? Scream in your sleep? Bleed at the wrong time of the month? That wasn't a symptom. That was evidence. You weren't treated. You were restrained, drenched in salt, gagged with cloth, cut with blades, while a crowd watched and called it holy. This is the terrifying reality of medieval exorcism, and by the end of tonight, you'll understand. They weren't driving out demons. They were just looking for someone to burn. And hey, if you'd like to help keep the torches burning around here and fund the dangerously heretical amount of caffeine it takes to research medieval horrors at 2 a.m, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link pinned in the comments. No pressure, but every cup helps ward off the possession symptoms caused by sleep deprivation and chronic Google scrolling. But before you get too cozy, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. Your wrists are bound with rough hemp rope, chafing skin already rubbed raw from your earlier thrashing. The bed beneath you creaks every time you breathe, which isn't often, because the air in the room is thick, oppressive, sour with candle smoke, sweat, mildew, and fear. It's cold, but not because of the draft. It's the kind of cold that seeps into your spine from the inside, the kind that whispers to your bones that you won't be leaving here the same way you came in. You blink, but there's no light except a dozen wavering flames ringing the room like a jury of silent witnesses. Somewhere, under the incense and mold, you catch the faintest trace of something familiar. Blood. Yours. The voice that reaches your ears is not soft. It's not soothing. It's a command wrapped in scripture, Latin slurred from the mouth of a man who's been up all night practicing how to shout at evil. He stands over you, a crucifix in one hand, a leather-bound book in the other. He's sweating, not from fear, but from effort. His eyes don't meet yours. He's not talking to you. He's talking to the thing they believe is inside you. The demon, the unclean spirit, the invader. You cough, and 3 people cross themselves like it's a gunshot. Someone gasps when your head turns. Your neck has a crick in it from the position they've strapped you into, and the back of your mouth tastes like iron. You try to speak, but all that comes out is a croak. Bad move. A nun in the corner flinches like you just levitated. You didn't. But give it time. They say it started 3 days ago. That's when your mother noticed you were talking to yourself. But you weren't. You were praying, whispering to Saint Dymphna, the patron of the mentally ill, because something wasn't right. The headaches were back. The twitch in your fingers, the flicker in your vision, that strange metallic buzz in your ears right before you blacked out during Mass. You woke up on the floor in front of the altar, surrounded by parishioners whispering, "Blasphemy." They said you laughed in tongues. They said your eyes turned black. You don't remember any of it. You only remember Father Ulrich pinning you down with one knee, shouting about Lucifer and the terrified sobs of your little brother as he watched them drag you out of the nave. Now you're here. Somewhere under the church, probably. A chamber of stone and shadows, where screams go to echo, and no one asks questions. The ropes are too tight. Your ankles burn. You try to shift, and suddenly a priest steps forward, flicks holy water at your face like a baptism gone wrong, and growls, "Be silent, foul spirit." You sputter and gag. It wasn't the spirit. It was the water. It went up your nose and down your throat in the same breath. You cough again, and someone behind you whispers, "It's mocking the right." That was your lungs clearing, not mockery. But it doesn't matter. Nothing matters except the ritual. The prayers start again. Louder now. There's a rhythm to it. A chant. Repetitive. Relentless. Like a hammer striking your skull again and again. The room spins. The candles flicker. One of them goes out, and a nun yelps like it was a sign. Maybe it was. Or maybe it's just bad wax. The priest circles the bed, like a vulture that read one too many psalms. He leans in close, his breath thick with garlic and panic, and whispers, "Tell me your name." You want to say it's still yours, that you're still in here, but your jaw won't work. You're too dry, too hoarse, too afraid. He takes your silence as defiance, or worse, proof. Your arms jerk involuntarily, a muscle spasm, a leftover echo of the seizure that started this whole mess. But to them, it's movement. It's the demon trying to break free. They scream the name of Christ like it's a weapon. You feel the wood beneath you shake from the force of their conviction. Somewhere behind your head, a bell rings 3 times. Someone has died. It might be you. There's a bowl on the floor. It's full of herbs, sage, rosemary, and something acrid that stings your eyes when the smoke hits your face. They waft it under your nose while chanting louder, as if the demon might be allergic to botany. You gag again. They call it resistance. The incense makes you dizzy. You close your eyes, just for a second, and then someone slaps you awake. "Stay present," the priest yells. "We're not done." You hadn't left, but now you wish you could. There is no safety word, no chance to explain, no room for doubt. The more you resist, the more they're sure. You moan in pain, and they say it's the demon crying out. You plead with your eyes, and they say it's a trick. You sob, and the priest smiles, triumphant, because tears mean he's winning. You're not a person anymore. You're a battleground. A screaming, sweating, shaking front line between heaven and hell. And you're losing. At some point, you scream. Not in tongues, not in Latin, just a scream, raw and animal. You didn't mean to. It just tore out of you when the nun dabbed salt on the cuts on your arms, mumbling that it purifies the flesh. It doesn't. It just burns. And that's all it takes. The room explodes in chaos. Everyone is shouting. The priest raises his crucifix like he's about to drive it through your chest. You realize in that moment, they don't want you healed. They want you purged. And it hits you. This isn't a rescue. It never was. This is punishment. A punishment for being different, inconvenient, misunderstood. You might have had a seizure. You might have had a breakdown. You might just be tired. But none of that matters. They've made their decision. You're possessed, and the only cure is pain. So you lie back. Rope cuts your skin. Smoke fills your lungs. Your ears ring with scripture screamed like war cries. The priest leans in again, sweat pouring down his face, and demands once more, "Name yourself, demon." You try to say your name, but your voice is gone. And for them, that's answer enough. It didn't take much. A wrong word at the wrong time. A nervous laugh during a funeral. A twitch of the eye. A dream you dared to describe out loud. The kind with fire and shadows and voices you couldn't place. That was all it took for the whispers to start. First, your neighbor stared too long. Then the midwife crossed herself when you passed. By the next morning, someone had told the priest, and the priest told everyone else. And by nightfall, the town had already decided. Something was inside you, and it wasn't holy. In 1357, there's no such thing as an off day. No room for anxiety, or grief, or just being a little odd. You don't get to have a strange mood. You get a demon. And once the word possession is spoken aloud, it doesn't go back in the bottle. It spreads like a cough in a crowded chapel. You're no longer Clara the baker's daughter or Tomas the smith with the shakes. You're a host, a body invaded, a danger wrapped in skin, and suddenly, Every little thing you've ever done gets rewritten with the ink of suspicion. Remember when you tripped at the May Day feast? Clearly the devil made you stumble. That rash you had last winter? Demonic scourge. Your stutter? Proof of unclean spirits clutching your tongue. Medieval Europe doesn't allow for nuance. You are either blessed or cursed. And once you're declared the latter, every explanation becomes a threat, and every cure becomes punishment. You tried to say you were just tired, that the night terrors were nothing new, that the blackouts were rare, and that your mother had them too, back when she lived. But explanations are useless now. Your voice no longer belongs to you. They say it's the demon talking, trying to deceive them. Your silence is guilt. Your words are lies. It's a foolproof system. You can't win. If you scream, you're raving. If you weep, you're weakening. If you pray, you're mocking the sacred. You could levitate off the floor or just sneeze during Mass, and either way, it ends the same, with holy water and ropes. It's not just what you do, it's what you are. Are you left-handed? Devil's side. Menstruating? Clearly possessed. Got a birthmark? Demonic stain. Do you talk in your sleep? Or worse, say things you couldn't possibly know, like quoting scripture when you've never learned to read, or blurting out a secret someone swore they never told a soul. That's not intuition. That's evidence. And if you're a woman with ideas bigger than your apron strings, congratulations. That alone is enough. You're dangerous because you see too much, speak too clearly, or refuse to lower your eyes. You're not broken. You're rebellious, which in this world is a flavor of cursed. They don't need much. No physical exam, no second opinion, no tests, other than what the friar thinks he heard when he passed your window at dusk. Maybe you were humming. Maybe you were crying. Maybe you were cursing a stubbed toe and said God's name in the wrong tone. The friar's not sure, but he knows it didn't feel right. And that's all it takes. From there, the charges stack like firewood. Your body doesn't belong to science. There is no science. The soul is your diagnosis, and the devil is always lurking, always waiting, always hungry for a crack to crawl through. If you twitch, it's possession. If you fall ill, it's punishment. If you grieve too long, the darkness has found a home. They don't see illness, they see infiltration. You're not suffering from a condition. You're hosting a creature. There are monks who make a career of this, specialists in the spiritual infection. They walk from town to town, robes heavy, eyes haunted, muttering psalms like they're swatting at flies no one else can see. They know the signs. They've seen them all. Or so they claim. One claims he saw a woman crawl backward up a wall. Another says he met a boy who burst into flames when sprinkled with holy water. None of them agree on anything except that it's always demons, and it's always your fault. The townspeople aren't just watching, they're participating. They peer through shutters. They whisper in pews. They bring their suspicions to the priest like offerings. And they start treating you like a ghost before you've even died. Children stop playing near your door. Your friends won't meet your eye. Even your family, if they're scared enough, will step back and say, "She was always a little strange." Once the crowd gets momentum, it doesn't stop. The fear is a fever, and you're the spark. Soon, everyone remembers a moment when you were off. That time you stared too long at the fire, the moment you laughed during a thunderstorm, the fact that you prefer your own company. Someone will swear they saw you talking to a cat. Someone else says you walk alone at night. You don't. But they remember it now, because belief is a trick mirror that shows whatever it wants to. The story builds itself, with you inside it. A haunted dollhouse, all shadows and suspicion. And if you happen to live near a place where bad things happen, a blight on the crops, a stillborn calf, a merchant's son who drowned in a well, people connect dots they drew themselves. You've become the scapegoat, the lightning rod, the vessel. They need you to be evil because the alternative is chaos. It's easier to blame a girl for a demon than admit the world is cold and random and cruel. If God is just, then someone must be unjust. And that someone, they've decided, is you. They bring you in not out of mercy, but to cleanse the village, to prove they're still good, still faithful, still on the right side of the unseen war between heaven and hell. You're not the patient, you're the battlefield, and they intend to win. When the ropes go around your wrists and the prayers begin, you're no longer a person. You're a warning, a lesson to others. The devil made you do it, they say. But really, they just needed someone to burn. At first, it was just you, strapped down, shaking under the weight of Latin prayers and suspicious glares. But possession, like fire, rarely stays in one place for long. Fear spreads faster than infection, and once they've decided that the devil has wormed his way into your soul, they start looking for the doorway he used to get in. Someone must have let him through. Someone near you. Someone close. The devil doesn't knock, they say. He's invited. You live in a village where everyone knows everyone's sins, real or imagined, and no one forgets a grudge. That time your neighbor's cow miscarried after you refused to lend her milk? She remembers. That moment your sister cursed under her breath during the planting season and then the rains didn't come? Your uncle remembers. That herbal tea your midwife gave you to ease your cramps last winter? The priest remembers. And now that you're writhing and sweating and muttering strange things in a dark church cellar, suddenly all those half-buried suspicions grow roots. Blame isn't just a reaction. It's a ritual, a comfort, something to cling to when the world doesn't make sense. Because if they can find the one who brought the devil here, they can punish them, purify the village, make everything clean again. Your soul might be corrupted, but your body is just the symptom. They want the source, and they're coming for it with torches and scriptures. The midwife is the first name whispered. She's older than most, unmarried, childless, lives on the edge of the woods. Too many plants in her house, too many jars filled with things no one recognizes. She knows the names of flowers that don't grow in the church garden. She speaks gently, but never smiles. Her voice is too even, her eyes too calm. And once, long ago, she said something about dreams meaning more than we think. That was enough. When you started screaming about shadows and saints and things that live under the skin, they remembered her herbs, her hands, her silence, and they said, "She taught you how to summon it. Then it's your sister. She cried too hard when they took you, clung to you too long, called the priest a fool. She used to be quiet, obedient, proper. Then your father died, and she started talking like she had thoughts. She reads too quickly, doesn't flinch when the butcher slaughters chickens. They say she talks to the wind. They say she stopped going to confession. They say she helped you write letters, and who knows what was in those. When she's dragged to the church steps and forced to kneel while they press a crucifix to her forehead, they wait for a burn. There isn't one, but her scream is sharp enough to draw blood, and some say that's just as telling. Neighbors turn on each other without hesitation. Men who shared ale now shout accusations over fences. Women who sewed quilts side by side suddenly remember who looked too long at the moon, or who once owned a black cat. Children are yanked inside at the sight of anyone whispering. Suspicion poisons the air like spoiled wine. You see it in their faces when they come to watch your exorcism, half praying, half hoping it's someone else next time. No one feels safe until someone else is screaming. The priest encourages it. Not outright. He speaks of vigilance, of rooting out evil, of the serpent always coiling in the grass. He says the devil doesn't work alone, that he sends messengers, familiars, seducers of the spirit. He says sometimes it takes two to open the gate, one to invite, one to host. And if you are the host, Someone else lit the candle that brought the darkness. He says this as he watches your face contort in pain from the salt pressed into your skin. He watches carefully, hoping your cries will slip and name names. They come to you while you're bound, not to comfort you, but to interrogate. Who else was there? Who did you speak with before it started? Did you dream of anyone? Did anyone give you food? Did someone touch your forehead while you slept? You try to speak, to say no, to say it was no one, but your throat is too dry and your mouth too swollen from the last bout of holy water. They take your silence as guilt. And worse, they take it as permission to decide for you. The witch next door becomes the witch in the next house, then the one across the lane, then the one who smiled too wide, or cried too late, or didn't cry at all. It doesn't stop once it starts. Guilt doesn't need evidence. It only needs momentum. A girl stumbles in the fields, and suddenly she's seen the devil too. A man speaks in his sleep, and they say he's been speaking to something. It becomes a game of hot potato with hell itself, and everyone's just trying to make sure they're not holding it when the music stops. Your screams are fuel. Every contortion of your body is theater. When you twist and convulse, when your eyes roll back and your fingernails scrape at the mattress, the town leans in and says, yes, it's real. And if it's real, then so is the threat. And if the threat is real, someone has to be punished for letting it in. You could tell them you don't know how it happened, that you're just scared, that you didn't mean for any of this, but your fear is just another symptom, another echo of the devil's laugh. No one wants to be next, so they look for someone easier to blame, someone quieter, someone without family, someone already disliked. And when they find her, when they drag her by her hair into the square and tie her wrists to the post, you see something in her face that shakes you. Not fear, not even anger, recognition. Because she knows it doesn't matter whether you were ever possessed, only that they needed you to be. You never stood a chance with the church involved. The moment your name was mentioned in the same breath as possession, it stopped being about you. It became a matter of policy, procedure, protocol. Somewhere between the candles and the chants, you turned from a soul in crisis to a case file. You're not being cared for. You're being processed. You don't go to a healer. You go to a bishop's assistant, a man with ink-stained hands and eyes so dull you're not sure he's even fully awake. He doesn't touch you, doesn't look at your bruises. He just asks questions like he's filling out a form. When did the symptoms start? Did you speak in unfamiliar tongues? Did you vomit black bile? Did your limbs move independently of your will? Did animals behave strangely around you? Did you confess all your sins before this began? No one tells you the answers don't matter. They already know what they're going to write. What matters is the performance, the theater of concern, the illusion of investigation. Behind every stone arch and incense cloud is a tangle of ecclesiastical red tape. Your priest reports to the archdeacon, who writes to the diocese, who sends word to the inquisitor, who checks with the canonical office of the preternatural. All of them cloaked in authority, all of them convinced that somewhere in the murk of your shaking body and ragged breath lies the work of Lucifer. And if they find it, and they will, they'll take credit for uncovering it. If they don't, they'll call it a clerical error. There's a manual for this. Literally, a thick, leather-bound tome written in a monastery and updated whenever a new pope decides demons are acting differently this decade. It's full of procedures, prayers, symbols, instructions on how to separate the spiritually ill from the spiritually damned. Step 1. Suspect everyone. Step 2. Document everything. Step 3. Never admit you're wrong. The clergy clings to it like it's divine law, flipping pages as you convulse on the stone floor, searching for the correct incantation as if your soul is a lock and they're just trying every key. Your examination is not private. The church does not do quiet concern. There are witnesses, scribes, assistants with quills and candles and sanctimonious expressions. They watch you drool and twitch and moan while they jot down notes like naturalists studying a wounded animal. You are not being helped. You are being cataloged. Every twitch is a sentence. Every cry, a paragraph. Your fear is a footnote. They ask you to speak, but only so they can measure the cadence of your voice. Too deep must be demonic. Too shrill, clearly unnatural. And if you say nothing at all, well, silence is the devil's favorite disguise. The church needs proof, but not real proof. They need signs, preferably dramatic ones. Frothing at the mouth, sudden strength, words you shouldn't know. So when you begin to shiver violently after 3 nights without food, they nod solemnly. When your wrists bleed from the ropes, they call it stigmata. When you scream in pain from the salt under your tongue, they whisper, it reacts to the sacred. You try to tell them it's just salt, that anyone would scream. But reason isn't part of the rubric. Their checklist is metaphysical, and you're already halfway to the bottom. They send for an exorcist. Not just any priest, a specialist. Someone trained, supposedly, to face darkness. He arrives with ceremony, robes billowing, eyes sunken from years of bearing holy burdens. He's not from your village. He's never seen your face before, but he already knows what you are. He doesn't need to speak with you. He needs to see you scream. That's what he came for. Because this is a production, a holy drama. There are roles to play, and everyone has a script. The exorcist is the warrior. The scribes are the chroniclers. The villagers are the audience. And you are the possessed. The centerpiece. The spectacle. You can feel it as they gather in the nave, pretending to pray while they wait for the exorcism to begin. Some avert their eyes, but most don't. Most watch you like they're hoping you'll do something memorable. You don't get a doctor. You get a relic, a splinter of wood said to be from the true cross, pressed to your forehead like a thermometer. You don't get a diagnosis. You get a verdict, delivered not by medicine, but by a man holding a crucifix who's already decided the conclusion before he even opened his book. And here's the secret. No one says aloud. The church needs demons, needs the possessed, needs people like you, because every successful exorcism is a reminder of their power. Every thrashing, screaming, purging soul is a badge of holiness earned through someone else's agony. Your suffering is their evidence. Your humiliation, their proof. If they can drive something out of you, real or not, they get to claim victory over the darkness. And if you die in the process, even better. Martyrs make excellent scripture, so they don't listen when you beg. They don't flinch when you cry. Your voice is just noise now. You try to hold on to yourself, but their faith is louder than your fear. They have procedures, rubrics, chains of command. You're not a person anymore. You're a line item in the holy bureaucracy, and somewhere, behind a locked door in the back of the cathedral, someone is already writing the sermon about your salvation. He arrives after dusk, when the torches cast long shadows down the cathedral's nave and the smell of damp stone mixes with the metallic tinge of anticipation. They told you the exorcist was coming like it was good news, like your salvation wore boots and whispered Latin. But when he steps through the arched doorway, you understand instantly. He is not here to save you. He is here to win. He's taller than you imagined, not hunched or feeble like the parish priests who bless bread and baptize infants. He moves like someone who's spent more time in caves than chapels, more battlefield than cloister. His robe is black, threadbare, crusted with wax, and other things you don't want to guess at. His belt rattles, not with rosaries, but with tools. A flask of holy water, a leather-bound manual of rites, a curved blade, a small hammer, twine, a vial of what looks like ash. He doesn't speak when he enters. He sizes you up like a hunter, judging whether the thing tied in his snare is still worth killing. His name is Father Ulrich. No one says his surname. They don't need to. He has a reputation that crosses dioceses. Mothers invoke him as a warning, not a comfort. He's known for results, and those results often leave behind smoke and silence. He is said to have exorcised demons from a boy who could levitate, from a woman who bit through iron, from a man who barked scripture backward in Greek. It's also said none of those people survived. But that's the point. When you exorcise the devil, you're not here to save the vessel. You're here to destroy the infestation. He kneels in front of you without speaking. Your wrists are still bound. Your mouth cracked and dry from days without water. Your body curled in on itself like it's trying to vanish. He takes a vial from his belt and dabs your forehead with something sharp and bitter. Myrrh, then salt, then a streak of something that smells like vinegar and rot. To provoke, he mutters, more to himself than to you. You try to meet his eyes. Big mistake. They're not cruel. They're worse. They're empty. Not the emptiness of madness. The emptiness of someone who's seen too much and decided it all meant nothing except power and pain. This is a man who believes utterly in the war between good and evil, and believes even more that casualties are necessary. He tells the priest beside him to prepare the chants, then rolls back his sleeve to reveal a scarred forearm covered in brands, symbols burned deep into his flesh like personal commandments. He begins with incense, the thick, throat-closing kind. It chokes the air until your lungs feel wet and heavy. Then he speaks, not in the soothing cadence of a healer, but in short, brutal Latin stabs, like he's daring the demon to interrupt him. When your eyes flutter, he seizes your jaw and forces them open. If you're in there, he snarls, you'll stay awake to hear your sentence. When you weep, he smiles, because he thinks it's working. You try to tell him you're not possessed, that you're just scared, just sick, that all of this is wrong. But he doesn't hear you, or rather, he hears you and interprets every word as deception. In his mind, no one who's truly possessed ever admits it, which means if you beg for help, you're lying, and if you stay silent, you're hiding, and if you scream, you're confessing. He doesn't listen for truth. He listens for opportunity. The knife comes out when the prayers stall. He doesn't use it immediately. He lets it sit in the light, glinting just enough to keep you fixated. It's not ceremonial. It's not decorative. It's not holy. It's utilitarian. The kind of knife someone sharpens every morning, not because it's dull, but because they like the ritual. He runs the flat side of the blade against your collarbone and waits for your pulse to change. It does. Not because you're possessed, because you're human. He cuts, eventually. Not deep. Not yet. Just enough to let the blood flow, to see if it sizzles when it touches relics. He catches it in a bowl with a relic fragment submerged in holy water. He watches, unmoving. When nothing happens, he doesn't question the test. He questions you. A clever one, he says. They always hide behind the flesh. The pain is not the worst part. It's the anticipation of what comes next. You realize there's a script he's following, but it's one he wrote himself. One where your body is a battlefield, and he is the lone soldier brave enough to face the abyss. He begins shouting, loud, vicious prayers that sound more like threats than benedictions. He presses relics to your cuts. He binds your hands in red twine. He forces a strip of linen soaked in oil between your teeth to cleanse the tongue. You gag. He watches, and when he doesn't get the reaction he wants, he escalates. He places his palm on your chest, just over your heart, and begins a new prayer. This one, slower, darker. You recognize the word percudium, strike. He tightens his grip until your ribs ache. He wants the demon to lash out. He needs it to. Because without that violence, he's just a madman hurting a tied-down girl. But if he provokes a scream, a curse, a convulsion, then he's a warrior of God. You try not to give him anything. You try to lie still, but your body betrays you. You tremble. You whimper. Your throat convulses from the incense and bile and hunger. It's enough. He declares the entity reactive. He announces that the demon is resisting. That means the exorcism must continue. And if the demon won't leave willingly, well, there's always the knife. They've stopped calling you by your name. You notice it halfway through the chanting when the priest with the cracked voice refers to you only as the vessel, a thing, a container, a problem to be emptied. They stopped seeing you as a person somewhere between the salt in your mouth and the binding of your wrists. Now, you're just the stage. They tie you to a plank of warped oak that smells like smoke and old spit. The ropes aren't clean. They're frayed and reused, stiff with the oil and blood of whoever came before you. They say it's for your safety, so you don't hurt yourself. But you know better. You know it's so when your back arches from the pain, when your muscles seize and your feet kick out involuntarily. They can look at each other and nod and say, "See, the devil fights us." It starts with confession, not a quiet one. Not the whisper in a box kind where a priest mumbles forgiveness. No, this is a public purge. They want volume, theater. Every sin must be named, out loud, like you're trying to outshout the demon. You're hoarse before you begin. Your voice is a rasp, and the echo in the stone room makes your own words sound foreign. They give you prompts, suggestions, accusations dressed as questions. Did you fornicate with beasts? Did you curse the name of Mary? Did you drink blood? Did you lie in the presence of relics? Did you dream of men while untouched? You shake your head. That's a mistake. A shake can be seen as defiance, and defiance is the devil's favorite dialect. So they push, not with their hands, but with scripture, with verses twisted into weapons and lined with nails. One priest reads from Psalms while another presses a crucifix to your stomach, watching your skin for signs. Signs of what? Blistering, preferably, foaming, seizures. But the absence of reaction? Somehow, that's suspicious too. They want a show, and your silence is killing the act. Then comes the part where they make you speak. They call it liberation through admission, but it's just pressure. Speak or suffer. Confess or convulse. You're too weak to argue, too drained to hold the line between what's real and what they want. You say you've lied. You say you've stolen. You say you once looked at a married man too long. That's all it takes. The priest's eyes light up. He turns to the others and declares it the first crack in your soul. They nod solemnly, as though you've confirmed a prophecy, not just surrendered to the exhaustion of being questioned by men who think God is deaf to nuance. But that's not enough. Now they want you to name accomplices. Did someone give you charms? Did someone whisper to you in the night? Did your sister teach you forbidden prayers? You hesitate. Another mistake. They see hesitation as resistance, and resistance is just another form of guilt. They smear ash on your face and speak of purification. They press beads into your palms until your fingers ache from clenching. And when you finally mutter a name, any name, just to make it stop, they act as if you've spit blood. One priest crosses himself. Another praises the Lord. You try to take it back, but they're already gone, racing down the hall to drag your neighbor into this mess. You weep, and they take that as more confession, more evidence. Then the contortions begin. Your body has betrayed you from the start, shaking from hunger, twitching from cold, recoiling from pain. Now they want more. They chant louder, louder still. Their voices fill the chamber like a flood, like a thunder that knows your name. The exorcist steps in again, holding a relic in one hand and holy water in the other. He circles you, slow and deliberate, like a vulture waiting for the meat to give in. Your back arches, not from possession, but from the searing cold of the water he flings at your chest. It strikes like ice. Your mouth opens in a gasp, and they call it a scream. Your eyes roll back, not from evil, but from lightheadedness. Still, they cheer. Still, they chant. You start to twitch. Small, spasmodic jerks from muscles kept tense for too long. It's involuntary, natural. They interpret it as demonic choreography. Look, someone whispers. It writhes. You are no longer a person. You are an it. They test you. They read scripture in Latin, watching to see if you respond. You don't. Not because you're hiding, but because you don't speak Latin. They consider this troubling. A demon, they reason, might hide in silence. A clever one might refuse to engage. You stay still, and they grow more agitated. It's mocking us, says one. Hiding behind the flesh, says another. They act as if silence itself is blasphemy. They shout the litany louder. They raise relics like blades. You start to whimper, not from fear of hell, but from the fear of staying here. Your jaw clenches. Your limbs tremble. Your body tightens. Drawn so tight, you think your spine will snap. It's not possession. It's adrenaline, trauma, shock. But none of that fits in their book. You can hear your own heartbeat now. Fast, panicked, primal. Your vision tunnels. Your breathing stutters. You wish they'd just stop. That they'd see you. Really see you. But your eyes are rolling again, and all they see is opportunity. You scream, finally. Not words, just sound, raw, involuntary. And that's when they smile. Because screaming, finally, makes it real. They don't care why you screamed. Only that you did. Only that now they have something to write down. Something to point to. Something to feed back into the ritual to justify the next round. You were quiet too long. Now you've confirmed their suspicions. The demon fights. The exorcist continues. And you try not to choke on your own truth. The room doesn't breathe. It seethes. The air is thick with incense, charcoal, and bodies. Sweat clinging to robes, wax dripping onto stone. You're not sure how long it's been since they began, because time doesn't work the same here. There's no sunrise in a chamber, sealed off from reason. Only a cycle of voices and violence, of salt and smoke and screaming. They strip you down to your shift, one that clings wetly to your skin like a second, shivering hide. Modesty no longer exists, not when your body has been declared a battleground. The priest lifts the thurible with both hands, swinging it in circles so the smoke wafts in rhythmic bursts. It chokes your lungs, turns every breath into a cough, every word into a rasp. You beg for air, and they call it resistance. They say the smoke purifies, drives out the spirits. You think it's just meant to suffocate whatever protest might still be trapped in your ribs. Next comes the salt, blessed by the bishop himself, they say. Salt that's been prayed over, passed through fire, and packed in cloth. They rub it into your skin, hard, under your arms, across your lips. In the arches of your feet, it burns, not like fire, but like shame, like being reduced to meat and superstition. One of the monks presses a handful into your mouth before you can speak. The demon fears salt, he tells you, as you gag, choke, retch, because it knows it cannot corrupt what has been preserved. You want to laugh, but you're too busy trying not to vomit. They smear ash across your forehead and chant louder. Latin, of course. Always Latin. A language they consider holy by default. A language you don't understand. A language that makes your name sound like a curse and your screams sound like punctuation. You think maybe they don't want you to understand. Maybe understanding would make you too human. The priest in charge raises a crucifix high above his head. It's large and ornate, all gilded edges and old wood. He presses it to your forehead with force, muttering a prayer beneath his breath. You try to lean away, but the ropes are tight. The pressure stings, not because it's sacred, but because it's bruising. He waits, watches. When you flinch again, he turns to the others and declares the demon is resisting holy contact. They nod, solemn and dutiful, like they haven't just made that same diagnosis for the last 4 people tied to this plank. They pour holy water down your throat next. You cough, splutter, twist, but they hold your nose closed until you swallow. It tastes like iron and mildew, like it's been sitting in a font for a decade. You heave. They cheer. It burns her, one of the younger priests yells. The purity stings the demon. You want to tell them it stings because you're drowning. That everything stings when you haven't eaten in days and your skin is raw. But no one's asking. No one's listening. The truth isn't part of the ritual. Your mouth is forced open with a stick, wedged between your teeth, so they can shout prayers directly into you. You feel the wood splinter. You taste blood. They lean in close, one by one, so their voices echo inside your skull. In nomine patris, they bellow, as if yelling it makes it holier. Exi immunde spiritus. Your ears ring. Your jaw aches. Every syllable lands like a hammer against your brain, pounding in a rhythm you can't escape. They scream God's word at you like a weapon. And you scream too. Not in Latin, just pain. They hate that. They want the demon to speak. They want guttural voices, curses, anything they can't explain. Instead, they get a girl crying for her mother, calling for help that won't come. The silence between chants is brief, but enough to remind you that no one here doubts what's happening, not even the onlookers. The villagers crowd behind the wooden barriers, clutching rosaries and whispering prayers, hoping they're not next. No one meets your eyes. They don't want to see themselves. You convulse again, not out of possession, but from exhaustion. Your legs kick once before collapsing under the bindings. The priest says the demon is weakening. Another says it's growing violent. They argue, briefly, over whether to escalate the ritual or let it play out. You wonder if they'd notice if you simply died, if they'd think it a victory, a soul reclaimed. They press a relic to your chest, something encased in glass, maybe a bone, maybe a tooth. You can't focus. The pain is too loud. Your heart thunders beneath the pressure, and your breath comes in stutters. The chanting never stops. They've entered a rhythm now, a battle tempo. You are no longer a participant. You are the stage. And then, just as your body begins to go numb, someone whispers a psalm into your ear, soft, low, almost kind. For a moment, you think it's mercy, but then he grips your jaw and shouts the rest, eyes blazing with conviction. Deus ultianum dominus, the God of vengeance is Lord, and you understand then what they really want. Not healing, not peace, just obedience through terror. The salt, the smoke, the screaming. It's not about casting anything out. It's about branding you, about forcing you into submission through sacred violence. You could be free of demons, disease, or sin, and it wouldn't matter. You're here to be broken in a way that feels holy, so you scream again, because your body can't take it anymore, and they nod, satisfied. To them, the devil speaks. They don't tell you what's coming next. They never do. The ritual has no schedule, only thresholds, and you, bound and half-conscious, have apparently reached another one. Your silence was too still. Your screaming wasn't convincing. Your contortions lacked flair. You didn't froth, vomit black bile, or quote scripture in reverse. You failed to perform your affliction to their satisfaction. So now they cut. It starts with murmuring. Not prayers this time, just debate. The exorcist confers with his aides like generals around a war table, voices low but pointed. The monk with the crooked fingers suggests leeches. The older one, gray beard, hands always twitching, argues for the blade. The youngest says nothing. He's too busy sharpening the knife already. You watch as they lay out their instruments, on a table that looks better suited to carving meat than healing souls. A bowl, already stained with someone else's fear. Cloth strips, none of them clean. A small knife with a curved edge, its handle worn smooth by hands who've used it too often and too eagerly. A jar of squirming black shapes, leeches, bloated from earlier sessions, still alive and ravenous. They call it therapeutic. You call it a slow death. The logic is medieval and terrifying in its confidence. The devil hides in the humors, they say, and bad humors, you bleed them out. Maybe the devil swims in your blood, coiled like a parasite. Maybe your wickedness curdled in your veins, and it must be drained like spoiled wine. They don't need proof. They have doctrine. They have tradition. They have 100 dead bodies in the ground who never objected. The leeches come first. Cold, wet things, placed on your forearms and ankles where the skin is soft and the veins are close. You want to scream, but your throat's already raw, and they've packed your mouth with cloth. The creatures latch on greedily, pulsing as they feed, fattening in real time. One priest marks the bowl as the first stage of purification. Another reads from Leviticus. Your blood drips steadily down the sides, mixing with salt and sweat and soot. You watch your strength leave you in drops. Then, the knife. They don't ask. They just hold your arm down and slice, shallow but wide. The cut doesn't hurt as much as it should. You're too far gone, too numb, too empty. The priest lets the blood fall into the bowl again, watching the color like it tells him something. Still thick, he mutters, shaking his head. The corruption clings. They tighten the ropes as your body flinches, not because you're resisting, but because instinct hasn't caught up to your surrender. The bowl fills faster than expected. You lose count of how many times they cut you, how many leeches they place, how many cloths they press to your skin just to peel away and admire. They smear the blood across relics, hoping for a reaction. They toss salt into the bowl and wait for it to hiss. It never does. That doesn't matter. They say you're still hiding the demon. Your vision swims. You can't tell if the ceiling is moving or if your eyes are rolling again. Every sound is muffled, like your head's been dunked in water. Your limbs are cold. You've stopped shivering. That's supposed to be a bad sign, but here, it just means they're getting close. They speak of balance now. The four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile. You're too full of the first, they say. Too warm, too moist, a perfect home for the devil's nest. They say the draining is helping, that your paleness is a sign of purification, that the tremors in your legs mean the demon is panicking. You know it's blood loss. They prod you with questions while you bleed. Do you feel clearer now? Do you hear fewer voices? Does the pain lift the fog from your soul? You try to answer, but your tongue is thick, your breath short, and all you can manage is a groan. They nod approvingly, mistaking delirium for divine progress. You're too weak to correct them. You're too weak for anything at all. The knife returns, this time for your back. They say it's the seat of evil, where darkness coils like a serpent at the base of the spine. The priest draws a cross across your shoulder blades with the tip of the blade, carving a prayer into your flesh. Each stroke is slow, deliberate, not enough to kill you, just to mark you. The pain is a firework behind your eyes. You cry out this time, and they rejoice. They collect the blood again. Say it's thinner now. See? One exclaims. We're reaching the root. The bowl trembles in the exorcist's hand as he raises it in offering. They don't pour it out. They save it. For analysis. For evidence. For rituals you will not survive long enough to see. The leeches are full. They fall off in fat, sluggish drops, wiggling toward corners to digest their meal. One priest scoops them up carefully. Another begins suturing your arms with coarse thread. Not for healing, but to stop the blood long enough to resume the ritual tomorrow. You think about sleep. But the stone floor is too hard, and the pain too loud. You float, somewhere between agony and unconsciousness. The chamber spins around you, voices echoing like ghosts. You hear Latin, murmured and mispronounced. You hear your name, warped and barely human. You hear laughter, and then silence. A long, eerie silence, broken only by your own ragged breathing. They step back, not because you're healed, but because you've been emptied. For now, your hands won't stop shaking. It starts in your fingertips, a quiet tremor, then creeps into your wrists and arms like a tide that won't retreat. You haven't eaten in days, haven't slept without screaming. Your body doesn't know where it ends anymore, only that it hurts. Constantly and everywhere, you twitch, gasp, and murmur to yourself in the dark, because it's the only way to stay tethered to something real. They say it's the devil trying to claw his way out. You say nothing, because last time you tried to explain, they stuffed your mouth with cloth and said, "Demons fear the word." The spasms started before they dragged you here. Days ago, maybe weeks. You remember falling, hard, your body locking up like it didn't belong to you anymore. Eyes wide, jaw clenched, back arched. You remember your mother crying. You remember your neighbor making the sign of the cross. You remember waking up on a cold floor with blood in your mouth and hands holding you down. Then came the voices, not from nowhere, just inside, like echoes from memories that wouldn't stay buried. You spoke in your sleep. You wept without knowing why. You talked to people who weren't there, but only because the ones who were had stopped listening. They called the priest, because here, in 1357, sickness isn't sickness. It's sin wearing skin. The idea that something could go wrong in the brain, chemicals, misfires, trauma, hasn't made its pilgrimage to Europe yet. There are no hospitals for the mind, only monasteries with candles and crucifixes. So when you collapse, foam at the mouth, or scream into the void, no one asks about your childhood. No one checks your pulse or your pupils. They don't ask what you've seen. They ask what you've summoned. Medicine doesn't look like medicine here. It looks like chains. It looks like fasting. It looks like being whipped by a man who believes he's saving your soul one lash at a time. You're not examined. You're interrogated. They don't write symptoms. They write sins. You tried to describe the shaking once, when your limbs convulsed against your will. The priest said that demons often seize the muscles of the impure. When you mentioned the voices, he smiled grimly and called it textbook infestation. You wanted to ask what book he was reading from, but your mouth didn't work anymore. Fear does that. They don't see a patient. They see a problem that confirms their fears. You might have epilepsy, but here, epilepsy is a portal. You might be schizophrenic, but here, that's just proof your body has two tenants. You might be traumatized, but no one cares what you survived. Only what you now invite. They talk about you in front of you, like you're already gone. They say the girl, or the creature. Never your name. That would humanize you. And if you're human, this stops being a righteous purge and starts looking a lot more like torture. The monk who checks on you isn't trained in medicine. He's trained in doctrine. He knows nothing of infection, but plenty about how pain reveals lies. He once healed a woman by burying her in the dirt for 3 days while he read Psalms. She didn't wake up. He called it deliverance. Now he watches your spasms with narrowed eyes, as though he can spot the devil mid-twitch. When you sob in your sleep, he whispers prayers into the straw at your feet. When you scream, he praises God that the demon reveals itself. He never considers that maybe your mind is breaking because you've been locked in a room with no sunlight, no food, and too many eyes that see right through you. It's not just the clergy either. The town joins in. They come to watch you convulse, to hear your muttered nonsense and gasp when your head jerks sideways. No one questions why you do these things only after hours of dehydration, fasting, and relentless spiritual attack. They think the ritual is drawing the darkness out. You know it's just killing you slowly. The worst part? Somewhere in the storm, you start to believe them. The pain rewires your thoughts. The isolation starts to echo. You begin to wonder, what if they're right? What if there is something inside you? What if this voice doesn't belong to you? What if the shaking is a protest from your soul? Because they don't give you another story to tell yourself. There's no diagnosis, no framework, no science, no sanctuary, only ritual, only exorcism, only the suggestion that your body is a battlefield, and everything wrong with it is evidence of something ancient and evil. You miss the idea of sickness. You miss the fantasy of a physician with clean hands and a sharp mind who asks what you feel instead of what you fear. You wish someone would give you a name that isn't possessed, but names don't matter here, only outcomes. If the convulsions stop, they'll say the devil fled. If you die, they'll say the devil was defeated. If you live, they'll say God won. But you were never part of the diagnosis. It starts with a blessing. Always. That's the rule. The priest mutters it over a basin, as if the water can hear him. As if the sound of Latin syllables can purify something stagnant and gray. Something that's been sitting in a chipped stone font collecting ash and dead flies. They tell you this is holy, that it carries God's authority. But when they tilt the basin toward your face, what pours out doesn't feel divine. It feels like poison. The first splash is a test. It hits your cheek and drips down your neck. Cold, sharp, gritty. Your skin tingles, burns. Someone in the room whispers that the reaction proves the demon is present. Another says it's simply working faster than usual. No one pauses to consider that the liquid reeks of rotted wine and minerals, that it smells like it was scraped from the bottom of a long-forgotten barrel, that it hurts because it's not just water. You flinch, and that's enough. They seize the moment. They force your mouth open. The gag is removed only long enough for them to wedge in a splintered wooden dowel, something to keep your jaw wide. It tastes of mold and blood, neither of them yours. They grip your hair tightly, too tightly, and lift your head just high enough to pour. They don't trickle, they flood. The water goes in all at once, splashing past your lips, down your throat, into your lungs. You sputter immediately, eyes wide, choking. Your body convulses in panic, trying to sit up, trying to breathe. But the ropes don't allow movement, and the priests don't allow mercy. Drink and be cleansed, one of them says, his voice calm, like this is a baptism instead of a drowning. You cough and it sprays back up, into your sinuses, your eyes, your ears. They cheer when you retch. They mistake the vomiting for the devil resisting expulsion. Your mouth foams, a frothy mixture of spit and sour liquid and blood. A monk wipes your chin with the hem of his robe, says something about how the possessed often spew bile when confronted with sanctity. You want to scream that it's just your stomach turning inside out, that anyone would react this way. But your mouth is full, and they aren't listening anyway. It's not just water. You can taste the salt, thick and raw, like a fistful of ocean silt. You can feel the sting of lye, or whatever burning agent they stirred in with the assumption that purity has a pH level. It sears your throat. It scrapes your tongue. Your gums begin to swell, pulsing with raw agony. And all the while, they keep pouring. One priest holds the basin, another chants. A third restrains your legs, as if the demon might try to kick its way out. You gag again, but there's nothing left to come up. Just the feeling of drowning in reverse, choking not on what you inhale, but on what's forced down your throat until your own body turns against itself. Eventually, you stop struggling. That's when it gets worse. They interpret your limpness as progress, a sign the demon is weakening, its grip slipping. They shout louder, hold the crucifix to your forehead so hard it leaves a welt. Someone sprinkles more of the blessed water into your eyes. It scorches. You try to blink, but your lids barely respond. Your vision clouds with tears, and then the tears sting too. You're not a person anymore. You're a container being emptied, drop by painful drop. Time disintegrates. You drift in and out of it. Every now and then, a phrase breaks through the noise. Christ commands you, leave this vessel. The light repels you. You think about light, how long it's been since you saw any real light. Not candle flame or torch smoke, sunlight, sky. You remember what that felt like. You almost cry, but you're too dehydrated for tears. Your stomach lurches again, but nothing comes. You dry heave until your ribs ache, your throat convulsing around absence. The monks say the devil is gasping, that it's clinging desperately to its host, that it fears the holy element. You know the truth. The only thing in you left afraid is your own body, begging you to make it stop. Eventually the pouring stops. The basin is empty. Your body lies soaked, sagging, draped over the wooden frame like a ruined garment. The priest signals for cloths. They dab your face, pat your limbs dry, bind your mouth again. They look pleased, hopeful, triumphant. You've been subdued, which is exactly what they wanted. You hear the words weakened and ready for phase 2. You don't know what that means, but you know it isn't rest. Not here. Not after this. The holy water wasn't meant to heal. It was meant to exhaust, to hollow you out enough for the next ritual to begin. You close your eyes, not because you sleep, but because everything burns too much to see. Your breath rattles. They say it's the demon's last gasp. You know it's yours. They come before the sun does, bundled in cloaks and hoods, children half asleep on their mother's hips. Men holding hunks of bread in one hand and a prayer bead in the other. The courtyard fills with bodies, warm breath fogging the air, murmurs building into a restless hum. You can't see them yet, not from where you are, chained to the altar rail inside, behind the curtain. But you can feel them. A presence, a pressure, the way animals sense a storm long before it cracks the sky. They're not here to save you. They're here for the show. Word spreads fast when someone's possessed. Faster than a harvest rumor. Faster than a birth. In a world where most days are a gray blur of tilling, mourning, and watching your livestock die from diseases no one can name, nothing cuts through the monotony like a good exorcism, especially when the victim is young, especially when the victim is female, especially when the rumors say she bit a priest and speaks in tongues at night, especially when the rumors say you levitated. You didn't, of course, but that doesn't matter. You arched your back once, violently, while seizing. That's all it took. One gasp from an onlooker, one exaggeration at the tavern, one tale passed from midwife to merchant. And now they're here, packed like penitents on pilgrimage, waiting to see the devil writhe inside a peasant girl. The priest delays the ceremony on purpose. He likes the tension. He likes the eyes. His assistants light extra candles, rearrange the crucifix 3 times, argue about which hymn will draw the most powerful reaction. This isn't medicine. It's theater. It always has been. And you, gagged and trembling, are the main act. When they finally unveil you, the crowd doesn't gasp. They murmur. They tilt their heads. They squint. You're not what they expected. You're pale, but not monstrous. Bruised, but not bleeding. Your eyes are sunken, not glowing. You're exhausted, too hollow to scream. A few people in the back look disappointed. They were promised fire and brimstone. They got sweat and rope. So the priests escalate. They begin with shouting. Not prayers, yet, but accusations. You've sinned, they say. You've consorted with the devil. You've cursed the crops. You've poisoned the air. You don't recognize the words as yours, but they claim you said them. Someone near the front spits at your feet. Another makes the sign of the cross so aggressively it nearly becomes a slap. Then comes the ritual, salt scattered in a circle, relics passed over your face, Latin barked into your ears until your head rings. You twitch, not from possession, but from noise, from dehydration, from fear. The crowd loves that. Gasps ripple through them. Children hide behind parents' legs. A woman sobs. A boy throws a pebble. And the priest doesn't stop him. Because now, you're not a person. You're a symbol. A canvas onto which they can project everything they fear but can't name. The failed harvest. The infant who didn't survive the fever. The sins they committed in shadow. The guilt that clings no matter how many confessions they whisper. You're a scapegoat wrapped in human skin. You try to close your eyes, but someone grabs your chin and forces your gaze forward. They want you to see them, to see the disgust, the awe, the fascination, and you do, all of it. Rows of faces, slack-jawed or smirking, some curious, some hungry. You wonder how many of them came just to see you die. They start praying louder now, more for the crowd than for God. The priest paces dramatically, slinging holy water with a flourish. It lands on your skin like vinegar on a wound. You hiss. Reflex, not ritual. But the crowd takes it as proof. They cheer. It burns her, one screams. She's writhing, another points out, as though you aren't simply trying to breathe through the nausea. A child asks when the frog comes out of your mouth. You nearly laugh. Someone passes around bread, wine, a chunk of half-rancid cheese. This is a picnic for them, a carnival. You catch the scent of roasting meat drifting in from the village edge. Someone's making stew. Entertainment this good demands a meal. A man in the front keeps shouting questions at you. Who do you serve? What's your demon's name? Did you fly in the night? You try to answer, to say anything, but your throat is raw and your mouth too dry. The gag makes your words unintelligible. They take your silence as defiance. The priest calls you proud. The man calls you whore. The children laugh. Someone asks the priest if you're going to float again. He says yes, if the spirit is still stubborn. He says the devil always makes a scene when he's about to leave. He tells them to pray harder, louder. So they do. Dozens of voices rise in clashing harmony, a chaotic chant of salvation for a girl they don't actually want saved. They want climax. They want spectacle. You understand, now, that the ritual isn't meant to help you. It's not even meant to expel anything. It's a pressure valve. For them, the world is collapsing. Famine, plague, war, death. And they need to believe they have power over something, even if it's just your body. Especially if it's your body. When the priest raises the crucifix for the final time, you're not even sure what day it is. Your skin is salt-crusted. Your limbs ache. Your ears ring. Your eyes sting. He roars a final phrase in Latin, slams the relic against your chest, and waits for you to scream. You don't. The crowd erupts. Anyway, they call it a miracle. You call it the moment you stopped fighting. Your mother is kneeling in the back of the chapel, rosary clutched so tightly in her hands the beads have left welts in her skin. She hasn't looked at you in over an hour. Not really. Not since you stopped crying her name and started convulsing. She thinks that part of you, the part that called her mama and wept into her apron, is already gone. Replaced by something else, something unspeakable, something she's been told only the church can fix. So she doesn't speak. She just mutters prayers and lets the tears run freely, as if mourning is the only thing she's still allowed to do. Your brother won't even come inside. He stands near the steps, half hidden behind a stone column, arms crossed like he's cold but won't admit it. When the crowd gasps, he flinches. When the priest calls you vessel of the unclean, he pretends not to hear. He wants to believe you're sick. He wants to believe it's a misunderstanding. But wanting doesn't mean speaking, and speaking might make them think he's infected too, so he stays quiet. Like a good son. Your cousin, on the other hand, doesn't believe in silence. She stands close to the altar, hair braided neatly, lips pursed in something that pretends to be concern. But it's her voice you hear when the priest leans over to whisper. It's her tone that colors the questions. Did you say strange things? Did you refuse to eat? Were there signs of rebellion? Your cousin nods, answers for you, fills in gaps you never made. She tells them about the time you muttered something under your breath when a storm ruined your father's field. She calls it a curse. She says you always had a temper. She leaves out the part where she stole from the offering plate and blamed you. The priest listens. He always listens. Not to you, of course, but to them. The people who come forward with stories. Half-true, poorly remembered, salted with fear and sharpened by jealousy. And family has the best stories. They know your routines, your weaknesses, your outbursts. They know what dreams you've had and who you whispered them to. They know which saints you didn't pray to and which rules you broke when you thought no one was watching. And now they get to speak. Your aunt says you've always been strange, too quiet, too curious, always asking about things girls shouldn't wonder about. She says she once saw you watching the moon and humming to yourself. Witch behavior, she calls it. Dangerous. Your uncle nods beside her, more out of loyalty than memory. He can't recall the incident, but he doesn't have to. Her certainty is more useful than facts. Your father doesn't speak at all. He hasn't since the first night you screamed in your sleep. Not even when the priest was called. Not when the neighbors came knocking. He looked at you like something had rotted inside your bones. Like whatever made you his daughter had been scraped out and replaced with rot. You thought he'd protect you. That was before you realized he'd rather protect his name. The church asks questions, but they already know the answers they want. All they need is someone to agree. And your family, God bless them, agrees. They say you used to talk back, that you refused chores, that once you spilled a bucket of milk and laughed when it soaked the floor, that you were unruly, that you stared too long at flames. They spin your childhood into a tapestry of warning signs. They weave your grief, your confusion, your silences into a possession narrative, and they offer it up as proof. You think, maybe someone will object. Maybe your mother will stand and scream that you're still in there, that she remembers rocking you through fevers and feeding you by hand after the famine, that she braided your hair while singing the same 3 hymns over and over, that your hands, trembling and bound, are still hers. But she doesn't. She's too scared. Of the church, of what it would mean if she was wrong, of what they'd do to her if she spoke up, and the priest decided the devil had spread. So she weeps. When they bring in a relic said to repel evil, your younger sister helps light the incense. Her face is blank, eyes dry. She saw what happened to the neighbor's girl last year, the one who refused to confess. She remembers the fire. Your family loves you. That's what makes this worse. They aren't sneering executioners. They aren't cackling with torches. They are terrified peasants in a collapsing world, clinging to rituals they barely understand and hoping that sacrificing one sheep will protect the whole flock. You are the sheep. The priest announces that your condition has deepened, that the devil has wrapped around your soul like a serpent, that your suffering is righteous, a purification. The crowd murmurs. Your cousin says something about the inheritance. How, if you die without children, the land reverts to her family's line. The priest frowns at the mention of land, but doesn't deny it. Property and salvation go hand in hand. Later, when they rest you between rounds, your wrists raw and lips cracked, your brother creeps in through the side door. He doesn't speak, just stands over you, eyes dark, unsure of what to say to a sibling who might be a demon. He leaves without touching you. That night, you hear the priest tell your father that it may take another few sessions, that expelling darkness isn't quick. Your father nods and offers a coin. He's paying for your salvation, like he's buying grain. And in some twisted way, maybe he is. Family was supposed to save you, but the truth is, they open the door. You were born wrong, not in the way they say under their breath, not malformed, not cursed by a midwife's shaky hand, but fundamentally, biologically, institutionally wrong. Your womb is a liability. Your tongue is a weapon. Your mind, when it dares to wander, is considered dangerous. You could recite every verse of scripture, scrub every floor in the monastery, tend to every festering wound in the village, but it wouldn't matter, because at the end of the day, you have the one thing they fear most, a uterus. It bleeds. It births. It aches without warning. It follows the moon instead of the calendar. And that, according to men in robes who have never touched a woman without a cross in hand, makes it a gateway to hell. They say Eve was the first to sin, and every woman since has carried that corruption like a disease in her belly. You are not a person. You are a risk. When the possession talk began, they didn't question your faith or your work ethic. They questioned your cycle. Had you bled recently? Was it heavy? Irregular? Did it come early? They asked, as though your body's schedule could summon Satan, as if a missed day meant a pact sealed. They didn't check for fevers. They checked for stains. And you gave them one, a single cloth, left too long in a basin, a smear of dark red on the edge, and suddenly your entire existence was under ecclesiastical review. You weren't sick. You weren't tired. You were under suspicion. Because God made man in his image, and you are not that image. You are deviation, mutation, a cracked mirror. The monks won't say it outright, of course. They wrap their condemnation in scripture, lace their misogyny with incense and chant. But listen closely. Hear the way they say her with a curl in their voice. Watch how they tighten the restraints when the possessed is female. Feel how quickly the ritual shifts from purification to punishment when breasts are involved. They say women are more emotional. That's why we're easier prey. The devil doesn't have to dig as deep, they say, because the soil of the female mind is already soft. They don't ask why we're emotional. They don't care that half of us watched children starve last winter, that our bodies are torn apart by childbirth before we turn 20, that we live with the knowledge that no matter how devout, how pure, how quiet, we are always one accusation away from the stake. They just say we cry too much. There's a ledger, somewhere in the Abbey archives, where they record possessions, names, dates, symptoms, gender. Of the last 50 entries, 42 were women. The numbers aren't surprising. They're doctrine. And if the monks do notice the pattern, they don't ask why. They just tighten the ropes and sharpen the knives. And if you speak up, if you try to explain that the dreams aren't demonic but memories, that the voices aren't spirits but trauma echoing through your ribs, then you're clever. And clever is worse than cursed. Clever women write. They argue. They teach other women how to read, how to question, how to push back. And every time one of them is found in a fit of sobs or seen talking to herself, they don't see pain. They see rebellion. And rebellion is always met with fire, even if you were possessed. Really, truly, body-thrashing, eye-rolling possessed. Do you think they'd exorcise you for your salvation? No. They'd do it for the record, for the theater, for the thrill of dragging a woman into the center of town and declaring her the vessel of every sin they've ever fantasized about but couldn't commit. Because a possessed woman is an excuse, a blank check to project fear, lust, envy, everything they loathe about themselves, onto someone who cannot fight back. And if she tries, the devil made her do it, so they press harder. The holy water becomes a flood, the prayers become shouts, the relics become weapons. They say your scream is unnatural. They say your resistance is the mark of the beast. But no one asks what it feels like to have salt rubbed into your skin while men hold you down and chant. No one stops to wonder if your thrashing is panic, not possession. They wouldn't care if they did, because in this game, womanhood is guilt. You remember the girl from the next village, not even 16, pulled from her bed one night because she had been seen laughing too loud near the well. They said she bewitched a man into lust. They tied her to the altar and whispered things like purity and cleansing, while her mother begged outside the door. They said it was over in a day, but you remember the limp way she walked afterward, the way her voice never returned. She got lucky. You know how it ends for most. So you stop talking. You let them say what they will. You nod when they say you're unclean. You scream when they want you to scream, because deep down, you've realized something. This isn't about demons. It's about power. And the most dangerous thing you can do as a woman in 1357 isn't curse, or bleed, or blaspheme. It's survive. They don't like women who know things. Knowledge, in their eyes, is a slippery slope. And the slipperiest slope of all is a woman who knows how to heal. A man with a vial of crushed herbs is a physician. A woman with the same vial is a witch. The difference isn't the remedy, it's who's holding it. If you ever boiled willow bark for pain, you were already halfway to hell. If you brewed mint for stomach cramps, you were asking for trouble. And if you dared to touch another woman's body, helping her give birth, cleaning her afterward, whispering prayers while she bled, that wasn't kindness. That was sorcery. Because in their world, nothing sacred can happen without a priest. A child isn't born until a man in robes declares it so. A woman isn't healed until the same man allows it. Anything else is intrusion, a threat to their monopoly on miracles. The midwives are the first to fall. They're always women, usually older, living on the edge of town, where their gardens grow wild with plants most villagers can't name. They know the smell of sage when it's crushed between their fingers, the sting of nettle, the calming weight of lavender. They know how to coax a baby's shoulders past the hips, how to stop the bleeding afterward with a poultice and firm hands. They are the only thing standing between life and death when childbirth comes too early, too late, or too violently. And because of that, they are feared. A baby dies, and it's the midwife's fault. A mother bleeds out, and the midwife must have wanted it. A child survives with a strange birthmark, and the midwife clearly bartered with the devil. There's no winning. Success is overlooked. Failure is a curse. Knowledge is guilt. You remember being brought herbs once, when the cramps were so bad you couldn't move from your bed. The midwife pressed dried chamomile into your palm and told you to steep it. She rubbed your back, whispered that it would pass. It helped, but you never told anyone. Because if you had, they'd say you were seduced into witchcraft, that the pain wasn't healed, but transferred, that comfort was not natural, that every herb is just Satan wearing a leaf. The irony is that the priests use herbs too. They drink wine infused with rosemary for their digestion. They chew fennel to sweeten their breath. They burn sage in the church, as if smoke itself can cast out shadows. But when it's in your hands, it's different. When it's in the hands of women, it's dangerous, because it makes you less dependent on them. And dependency is the leash they never want you to slip. You've seen how quickly a healer can become an enemy. One whisper, one accusation, one strange smell drifting from her hut at night. Maybe she was burning lavender for sleep. Maybe she was making a poultice for a fever. To the village, that smoke looks like summoning. The mortar and pestle look like occult tools. The jars of dried leaves become potions. The knowledge in her head becomes treachery. All it takes is a single child pointing at her garden and saying, "She talks to plants," and suddenly there are torches at her door, and the church loves it. They need it. Every burned midwife is proof of their dominion. Every condemned herbalist is a warning to the rest. Don't try to heal yourselves. Don't trust your own hands. Don't dare believe that women can bring life or soothe pain without the church's approval. Your garlic poultice for infection? Sorcery. Your honey and vinegar for wounds? Blasphemy. Your collection of seeds, roots, and bark carefully gathered and passed down from generations of women who refused to watch their families die of preventable ailments? Evidence. The crowd feeds on it. They've watched too many children die, too many harvests rot, too many bodies waste away from things they don't understand. They want answers. And when the priest points to a woman with herbs under her nails and says, "She knows too much," the crowd exhales in relief, because ignorance is safer than admitting that life is random, cruel, and often unsalvageable. Better to burn the healer than face the truth. You feel the weight of that when they drag you into the church, when they press relics to your skin and demand to know who prepared you. They don't mean fed you. They don't mean clothed you. They mean who gave you knowledge, who taught you to whisper when you should have prayed, who gave you herbs when you should have fasted. They want a name, and they want it now. And you know that if you give them one, if you so much as whisper the midwife's name, they'll have a pyre ready by morning. The midwives, the herbalists, the women with scraps of healing knowledge, none of them survive long once suspicion turns their way. They are too visible, too useful, too easy to blame. A woman who can stop blood, ease pain, coax milk, deliver life, that kind of power doesn't belong outside the church. So the priests demonize it until the villagers can't tell the difference between a healing touch and a curse. And the more the villagers fear, the easier it is to watch the flames rise. In another world, you'd be cured with willow bark, soothed with mint, healed by hands that smelled of soil and smoke. In this one, you're strapped down while men with rusting chains tell you that your cramps, your screams, your blood, your body, all of it is proof that you've let Satan in. And when you think about the women with gardens and jars and quiet practical wisdom, you realize the truth. They aren't dangerous because they summon the devil. They're dangerous because they don't need the church. The priest's voice is cracking. He's been shouting Latin for hours, and the words have stopped sounding holy. They've become guttural, spit-laced growls. His hands shake when he raises the crucifix again, pressing the cold metal to your chest so hard you feel your ribs bruise beneath it. He expects you to thrash, to howl, to collapse into silence. Instead, you just gasp and tremble, the way anyone would when starved, beaten, and drowned in holy water. You're not healed. You're not quiet. You're not free. And that terrifies him more than your screams. Because if the devil doesn't leave, then what does that say about him? The crowd watches from the nave, eyes wide, breaths held, murmurs low. They've been promised a victory. They've been told that God, through the priest, will triumph over evil. That all their suffering, the hunger, the plague, the endless funerals, will be balanced by one show of power. You were supposed to be the proof. A vessel emptied. A spectacle concluded with applause and relief. But you're still writhing on the stone floor, still gagging on salt and smoke. And now their belief is thinning, unraveling with each wasted hour. The priest wipes sweat from his brow and glares at you like you've betrayed him. Like your stubborn survival is an act of defiance rather than desperation. He whispers something to his assistant, who scurries away. The chants falter. The crowd grows restless. People shift, cough, whisper. Some make the sign of the cross. Others glance at the door, as if wondering if they should have stayed in bed. Because nothing unsettles faith like failure. Nothing makes people doubt faster than the sight of a ritual that doesn't work. And failure must have a cause. It could be the priest. Maybe he's unworthy. Maybe his prayers were impure, his faith imperfect. But that possibility cannot be allowed. To admit incompetence would fracture the entire performance. So the blame has to land elsewhere. It has to land on you. They say you've harbored the devil too long, that you've invited him, nourished him, given him room to root. They say your silence when questioned was cunning, that your sobs were lies, that your convulsions weren't signs of sickness but proof of your pact. The priest, desperate to maintain control, raises his voice and declares that sometimes possession reveals not a victim, but a collaborator. That sometimes the one who writhes is not an innocent at all. You feel the shift in the air when he says it. The gasps, the murmurs, the way the crowd leans back as though the infection might spread from you to them. Suddenly, you're not just a girl fighting an invisible tormentor. You're a suspect, a criminal, a witch. The ropes tighten. Not literally. They were already pulled so tight, they've cut into your wrists. But metaphorically, you can feel the walls of the church pressing closer, the air growing heavier. You're no longer here to be saved. You're here to be judged. The priest tries again, louder, harsher. He dribbles holy water into your eyes until they burn raw, presses relics against your wounds until your skin blisters. He screams the litany until his throat is shredded. Still nothing. Still you. Still human. He paces now, frantic, muttering about tests, about trials, about how the devil is trickier than usual. His assistants nod furiously, their eyes darting to the crowd, terrified of losing control. And the people. They're hungry for resolution. They didn't come to watch endurance. They came for a finale. They came to see the devil expelled, or at least destroyed. If they don't get it one way, they'll take it another. They want an ending. And if the demon won't leave, they'll burn it out. The priest straightens, smoothing the front of his robe, and announces to the congregation that this is no ordinary possession. This is corruption. This is witchcraft. He says the signs were there all along. The muttering, the bleeding, the resistance, the unnatural endurance. He says no demon could linger so long without invitation. He says the truth is bitter, but clear. You weren't taken by the devil. You welcomed him. The crowd exhales as if relieved. Relieved that the priest isn't weak, that God isn't powerless, that the ritual isn't meaningless. Relieved that the problem lies with you, the girl on the floor, the one too strange, too loud, too stubborn, too unlucky. You've given them their answer, even if you never opened your mouth. Now it isn't an exorcism anymore. It's a trial. They question you, though question isn't the right word. They shout accusations and call them evidence. Did you fly in the night? Did you consort with beasts? Did you speak to shadows? Did you steal a man's seed and offer it to Satan? Your silence condemns you. Your screams condemn you. Your tears condemn you. Every reaction, every twitch, every breath is proof. The priest gestures to your bloodied arms, your swollen eyes, your blistered skin. He calls them signs of resistance, marks of guilt. He turns the spectacle of your torture into exhibits of your crime. The crowd nods. They mutter. They agree. Because it's easier to believe you chose this than to admit the church failed. You lie there, dizzy, broken, half-conscious, and you realize something chilling. It was never about saving you. It was never about expelling anything. It was about control, about power, about making sure that when the ritual didn't work, the story still did. So they'll call you witch. They'll drag you through trial. They'll burn you if they have to. And when the smoke rises, they'll say the devil was defeated at last. No one will admit the truth, that the devil never left because he was never there. They say justice is blind, but here it's just sadistic. The exorcism has failed. The priest's voice has cracked, and your screams haven't turned into demonic howls. So now they need proof. Something visible, tangible, undeniable. And since no one can agree on what the devil looks like when cornered, they turn to the oldest test they know: pain. If God favors you, he'll protect you. If he doesn't, then he's already made his judgment. Either way, your body will tell the story. Or rather, they'll tell it for you. The trial begins at dawn. You're dragged into the courtyard, arms bound, body brittle from starvation and blood loss. The villagers are waiting, their faces pale in the morning light, eyes gleaming with that mixture of dread and hunger that comes when misery doubles as spectacle. They've seen ordeals before. They know the rules. They know the outcomes are always the same, but still they gather, because nothing makes them feel safer than watching someone else suffer for sins they fear might be their own. The first ordeal is fire. They stoke a pit with hot coals until the air wavers above it like liquid. The smell of smoke sticks to your skin before you even get close. They unbind your feet, shove you forward, and announce that if you can walk across the embers unharmed, then you are innocent. You stare at the pit, at the glowing stones that hiss and crackle, and you almost laugh, because it's not a test. It's a sentence disguised as divine lottery. Flesh cooks when it touches fire. That's not heresy. That's physics. But they don't know that word, and they wouldn't care if they did. You try to step lightly, but the heat licks upward, scorching before your soles even meet the stones. The first step tears a scream from your throat. The second step makes you stumble. By the third, you're crawling, dragging yourself to the other side while the skin bubbles and splits beneath you. The crowd gasps, then mutters. The priest shakes his head solemnly. Burned feet mean guilt. Always guilt. Innocence would have been a miracle. And miracles don't happen for women like you. They don't give you time to recover. Your feet are blistered and raw, but they're already preparing the iron. A bar pulled from the forge, glowing orange, humming with heat. They hand it to you like an offering, though your wrists are bound, and the iron sears your palms before you can even grasp it. You shriek, the sound tearing from what's left of your throat. The iron drops to the dirt with a thud, and you collapse with it, your hands a ruin of charred flesh. They don't bandage you, they don't soothe you, they just lean over and declare that if the wounds fester, you're guilty. As if rot is not inevitable when filth and ash seep into an open burn. The water comes next. You're dragged to the river, feet leaving streaks of blood in the mud. The crowd follows, eager, restless, whispering prayers that sound more like curses. They tie your arms and legs with rope, then knot a heavy stone to your waist. The priest declares that pure water rejects the corrupt, that if you float, it means the devil buoyed you up, that if you sink, it means God welcomes you into his embrace. You stare at the water, black and rippling, and realize it's the only honest test they've offered, because either way, you're finished. They shove you in, the cold bites worse than the fire. It drags the air from your lungs, seizes your chest in a vice. The stone yanks you downward, deeper and deeper, until the world above is just fractured light and muffled shouts. You thrash, desperate, instinct louder than reason. For a moment, your body fights so hard that the ropes snap at your wrists, and you almost break the surface. Almost, but then hands shove you back down, pressing, forcing, until your vision blurs and the water seeps into every part of you. When they finally drag you out, sputtering, retching river water mixed with bile, the crowd erupts. You didn't die fast enough. You floated too long. Proof, they say. Proof of guilt. Proof of devilry. Proof that the demon clings to your soul like barnacles to a hull. No one points out that God's supposed embrace nearly drowned you. No one mentions that innocence by death is no innocence at all. They don't care. They've seen enough to justify what comes next. The priest lifts his hands, trembling with fatigue but steady with conviction, and declares that you have failed the ordeal, failed the fire, failed the iron, failed the water, failed God himself. He doesn't say he failed the exorcism. He doesn't say the ritual failed him. He says, you failed. The crowd murmurs, nods, spits. Some cheer, some cry, but none object. You lie there in the mud, soaked and burned and bleeding, and you realize what justice means here. It isn't truth. It isn't mercy. It isn't even God. It's theater, and the ending is already written. If you'd walked the coals without blistering, they would have said the devil carried you. If you'd held the iron without burning, They'd claim Satan hardened your skin. If you'd sunk and drowned, they'd have called it proof of innocence. Too late to matter. There is no path to freedom. There never was. The trial isn't about proving your guilt. It's about proving their power. Every scar on your body is their evidence. Every scream you give them is a confession. Every failed ordeal is a sermon for the next Sunday, a warning to anyone who dares twitch, cough, or dream too strangely. By the time they drag you back to the church, your body is little more than pain stitched together by breath. You can hear them already planning the next step. Some say another exorcism. Some say prison. Some whisper about firewood. The priest promises that the devil will be driven out, one way or another. But you know the truth. They don't want the devil gone. They want you gone. Your body doesn't feel like a body anymore. It feels like a sack of aches, stitched together with rope and willpower, dragged across stone and mud until even the pain feels foreign. You try to count your breaths, to keep track of something that belongs to you. But each inhale scrapes like broken glass, and each exhale wheezes like a dying bellows. Hunger gnaws at your gut, but it's dull now, replaced by a hollow emptiness that feels almost worse than the pangs. Days without food, hours without water. You're more absence than flesh. The burns on your hands have gone numb, and that frightens you. At first they blistered, swelling until every movement ripped the skin further apart. Now they're stiff, useless, blackened in places where sensation has vanished completely. You want to weep for the loss of your hands, but even tears don't come anymore. Your body has run out of water for grief. The only wetness you can summon is the river you still feel in your lungs, sloshing in memory, each cough dragging up strings of spit that taste of iron and mold. You reek. You know it. The smell clings to you. Burnt skin, unwashed sweat, salt crusted into your pores, incense trapped in your hair. You smell like smoke and fear, a scent even animals would avoid. The priests call it the stench of corruption, proof that the devil festers inside. You know it's just what happens when you're denied even the simplest kindness of washing, when your body rots slowly while still alive. But they don't want explanations. They want spectacle, and nothing stirs a crowd like the scent of something dying. Your bones ache with a depth you didn't know was possible. Not just the bruises, though there are plenty. Purple welts, blooming across your ribs, your thighs, your shoulders. Not just the cuts, though those sting every time the rope shifts. It's deeper. A marrow-deep exhaustion, as if even your skeleton has grown tired of holding you together. You can feel the grind of joints swollen from restraint, knees stiff from kneeling too long, ankles raw from being tied in the same position day after day. Even your jaw feels unhinged from the gag that's been wedged there too often. Your skin tells its own story. Layers blistered from fire, chafed raw from rope, bitten by leeches, split open by knives. Salt rubbed in, water poured on, ash smeared across. Every inch of you catalogued, tested, weaponized. They read your wounds like scripture, as if every mark is a letter spelling out Satan's name. They don't see a girl who has been systematically broken. They see a canvas of proof, painted in blood and burns. And your mind. Your mind is worse. It slips, falters, unravels with each hour. Time doesn't move forward anymore. It folds in on itself. A minute feels like a lifetime. A day feels like a second. Sometimes you're back at the river, choking. Sometimes you're on the coals again, screaming. Sometimes you're a child in your mother's arms, safe for the last time. The boundaries blur until you can't tell if you're dreaming or remembering, if the chant in your ears is Latin or just the rhythm of your own pulse. When you try to hold on to thoughts, they scatter like ash. Words lose meaning, shapes blur. You hear whispers in the dark, but you can't tell if they're real. or if your mind is inventing them just to keep itself occupied. The priests lean close and call these voices demons. You know they're hallucinations, the brain clawing for something to fill the silence. But knowing doesn't stop the fear, because eventually you start answering back. You think you see faces, the midwife who once gave you herbs, the boy from the next village who drowned last spring, your grandmother, long dead, mouthing something you can't understand. You want to believe these visions are mercy, that your mind is offering comfort before it dissolves completely. But the priests take every flicker of your gaze, every muttered word, every half-formed plea, as more evidence that the devil still digs his claws deeper. And so they keep going. They say the devil is stubborn, that he hides in the marrow, in the womb, in the throat, that if your body hasn't given up, then surely it means the demon hasn't either. They can't admit what's obvious, that you're dying, not resisting, that the only thing stubborn here is their refusal to see you as human. You try to speak, to tell them it's just you left. No demon, no curse, just a girl who is hungry, broken, unraveling. But your voice is gone, rasped away by smoke and chanting and water forced down your throat. When you open your mouth, nothing comes. They lean closer anyway, eager, convinced that silence itself is the devil mocking them. The priest places a hand on your chest, feels the frantic flutter of your heartbeat beneath bone and bruises. He calls it agitation, a spirit thrashing. You know it's just terror. Your body knows it's losing. Your body knows it's failing. Your body wants out. You sag against the ropes, more weight than will. The crowd watches with wide eyes, waiting for some miracle. Either your healing or your combustion. Either way, they want closure. They want the story to end. But the priest insists the ritual must continue, that the demon has not yet yielded, that if your body breaks, then so be it. The soul, he says, is worth more than flesh. But you know the truth. The flesh is all you ever had. And now, even that is slipping away. You start laughing. Not because anything is funny, but because the world has folded in on itself, and the only way your body knows how to keep from splintering completely is to laugh. It comes out jagged, high-pitched, too loud for the silence between chants. The sound bounces off the stone walls, sharp as broken glass. The crowd recoils. The priest flinches. And in that instant, they see not a girl unraveling under torture, but the devil mocking them. You try to stop, pressing your cracked lips together, biting down hard enough that the copper taste of blood floods your tongue. But your shoulders still shake. Your chest still convulses. The laughter claws its way out anyway, spilling into the sacred air like blasphemy given form. You're not laughing at them. You're not laughing at God. You're not even laughing at yourself. You're laughing because your mind has snapped its last tether, and hysteria is the only sound left. The priest points at you, eyes wide, spittle on his beard. "See how it mocks us?" he roars. The congregation gasps and crosses themselves in a flurry of hands. A child begins to cry. Your body trembles, but the laughter turns into sobbing without warning, jagged breaths collapsing into tears you didn't think you had left. The shift is sudden, violent, one heartbeat manic, the next miserable. You curl inward, gasping, choking, eyes swollen and wet. To them, it is more proof. The devil is cunning, they say. He weeps when he cannot win. He wails when the light burns him. But it isn't cunning, it's collapse. Your mind is staggering through the wreckage of itself, searching for somewhere safe to stand. When laughter doesn't work, when sobbing doesn't soothe, it drifts into emptiness. You go still, eyes open but glassy, limbs slack against the ropes. The world muffles. The chanting fades to a hum. You watch yourself from somewhere above, detached, unfeeling, floating far enough away that the bruises and burns don't quite belong to you anymore. This is how you survive. You leave. You step out of yourself. You vanish into the hollow space inside your head where they can't quite reach. But to them, dissociation is not survival. It's possession. The priest slams his hand on the altar and shouts for more prayers. The monks gather around you, circling like scavengers. They raise their voices, the psalms louder, harsher, each verse meant to burn through whatever wall you've built to protect yourself. They mistake stillness for stubbornness, blankness for resistance. They think the devil is crouching in your skull, smirking, waiting for their fury to wane. They cannot comprehend that sometimes silence is not defiance. Sometimes silence is surrender. They beat it out of you anyway. A monk drives his fist into your ribs while reciting from the Gospel of John. Another yanks your head back by the hair and screams scripture into your ear until your eardrum buzzes. The priest presses a crucifix into your temple, hard enough to leave the imprint of Christ's body in your skin. Each blow, each verse, each burn is meant to separate you from the thing they insist has taken hold. They don't see that the thing breaking is you. You cry again, but this time the tears are soundless, your throat too raw for wailing. The priest shouts louder to cover the silence, as though drowning you in holy words will force the truth out. He reads the Psalms with the cadence of a soldier swinging a weapon, every line a strike meant to bludgeon the devil. You are not a girl tied to a plank. You are a battlefield. Your mind is the ground they're trying to reclaim with verses and fists. You want to explain. You want to tell them that what they're calling possession is just the echo of trauma, the body's only defense against terror it cannot escape. You want to tell them that the laughter was panic, the crying was despair, the stillness was retreat. You want to tell them that madness isn't sin, that the fractures in your mind aren't invitations to Satan, but scars left by the people in front of you. But your mouth won't form the words, and even if it did, they wouldn't believe you, because to them, there is no difference between madness and malice. They've read their scripture and convinced themselves that demons dwell in the weak, in the women, in the weary. They don't see trauma. They see temptation. They don't see hallucinations. They see heresy. They don't see disassociation. They see defiance. In their world, healing is irrelevant. The only cure is confession. The only remedy is punishment. So they keep going. You laugh again, but it's softer now. A hollow little sound that cracks into nothing before it fully escapes. They call it mockery. You cry again, shallow sobs that scrape your throat dry. They call it deceit. You go silent again, drifting far beyond them, staring at the ceiling like it might open to swallow you. They call it proof. Every response is an indictment. Every survival instinct is rebranded as evidence. And through it all, the Psalms never stop. Verse after verse, recited over your trembling body, a chorus of holy fury aimed at a ghost they invented. They aren't healing you. They aren't saving you. They're grinding you down, hammering away at the fragile threads of your sanity until all that's left is an empty shell they can claim as victory. There's no healing here, only endurance. And even that, you're running out of. The chants stop not with triumph, but with a cough. A voice clears from the back of the chamber, heavy and deliberate, cutting through the cadence of psalms like a knife through cloth. The priests falter, their rhythm broken. Heads turn. The crowd parts. A figure approaches, not frantic, not sweating, not swollen with the fever of ritual. He is calm. He is robed differently. His ring glitters in the candlelight, and everyone lowers their eyes before him. A bishop. He doesn't look at you right away. He looks at the priest, the assistants, the relics scattered across the altar, the bowl of blood half coagulated at the edge of the table. He studies the scene the way a man studies a poorly rehearsed play. His face doesn't twitch, but his silence is louder than any accusation. The priests stumble over themselves, bowing, muttering explanations about how stubborn the devil has been, how fierce the infestation, how necessary the ordeal. Their words tumble in a rush, desperate to prove competence. The bishop lifts one hand. The excuses collapse into silence. Finally, he looks at you. You are slumped, head hanging, skin pallid, burns and bruises painted across you like scripture no one wants to read aloud. Your lips are cracked, your hands blackened, your body sagging against ropes that long ago rubbed your flesh raw. You wheeze when you breathe, the sound wet, uneven, broken. There is no spectacle left in you. No convulsions, no shrieks, no mockery of Latin. Just exhaustion so deep that even suffering has dulled. The bishop sighs. It's not pity, it's irritation. He turns to the priest and says, "The ritual will cease. Not because you are healed, not because you have been declared innocent, not because anyone saw sense, but because the ordeal has grown messy, prolonged, unprofitable. You are no longer a vessel for God's triumph. You are a distraction." Your screams bleed into vespers, interrupting the liturgy. The townsfolk have grown restless. They've already had their fill of entertainment, and now you are nothing but noise. The priest tries to argue, his face red and desperate. He insists the devil is clever, that more sessions are required, that salvation takes time. But the bishop's patience is iron. He declares that if the demon has not left by now, it will not leave through this performance. If God wished victory here, he would have shown it. Instead, the girl is fading, and all they risk is the embarrassment of a corpse tied to their altar before the hymn is finished. Embarrassment, not mercy. You cough, hard, your body jerking forward, spittle and blood dripping from your mouth. The bishop does not flinch. He simply nods, confirming his own judgment. "Enough," he says, his voice echoing against the walls. "End it." The crowd murmurs, confused, disappointed. Some wanted more, some wanted fire. A boy whines that he didn't get to see you levitate. A woman whispers that stopping now means the demon is still inside you. Another crosses herself, muttering that it's dangerous to leave unfinished work. But no one dares defy the bishop. His authority is greater than their appetite for spectacle. The priests untie you reluctantly, as if the ropes are the only proof they ever had. Your arms fall limp to your sides, your legs buckle immediately, and you collapse into a heap on the stone floor. Hands seize you under the shoulders, dragging you across the dirt like refuse. You don't resist. You can't. Your body is too far gone for resistance, your mind too frayed to register humiliation. The crowd parts to let you through, eyes downcast now. The show is over. You hear fragments as they argue above you. The bishop says something about transferring you to a cloister, letting the nuns deal with what's left. Another suggests the infirmary, though no one expects healing. Someone mutters that perhaps you should be left outside the town, beyond consecrated ground, where whatever clings to you won't trouble their prayers anymore. None of the suggestions are about you. They're about disposal. Your mother tries to push forward, clutching her rosary, weeping. She begs for another chance, for another prayer, for another miracle. The bishop silences her with a glance. Her sobs fade into the low murmur of the dispersing crowd. Your father doesn't speak at all. He stares at you as if you've already been lowered into a grave. The priests gather their tools, muttering about wasted effort, about stubborn demons, about how the girl was too far gone to save anyway. They don't call it failure. They call it mystery, God's will, the unknowable, anything but what it really is. Defeat. You're dragged to a side chamber, dumped onto straw that smells of mildew and mouse droppings. A nun enters briefly, sets a wooden cup of water near your head, and leaves without looking at you. You try to lift your hand toward it, but your fingers won't close around the rim. The cup tips, spills, soaks the straw. You press your cheek against the wet patch and drink what you can through your cracked lips. No one returns for hours. No one checks your wounds. No one prays at your side. The ritual has ended, and so has their interest. You are not cured, not absolved, not freed. You are just unfinished. When night falls, you hear the distant bells of Vespers, clear and calm, unbroken by screams for the first time in days. The congregation sings, voices strong, unshaken. The bishop sits in his chair, assured that order has been restored. The priests rest their voices, their pride intact, and you lie in the dark, broken, forgotten, not because the devil left you, but because you stopped being worth the effort. They say you're healed. That's the word, whispered through the corridors of the church, carried on the lips of priests who never once looked you in the eye while they poured lie down your throat. They say the devil is gone, cast out by holy perseverance, and that what remains is pure. They don't mention your wrists, raw and split from ropes. They don't mention your blistered feet, or your ruined hands, or the way your voice has been scraped into silence. They call it victory. You call it survival, though even that feels like a lie. When they finally untie you, it isn't gentle. The knots are yanked loose, as though they resent the fibers for holding your weight so long. You collapse instantly, legs folding under you, arms useless at your sides. The straw beneath you smells of mildew and rat droppings, but it might as well be a feather bed compared to the stone. The guards don't linger. They drag you into a cell, push you inside, and slam the door shut with the same force they might use on a thief. For the first time in weeks, there are no chants, no hands pressing relics into your skin, no water choking you into silence, just emptiness. Your stomach growls, but there's nothing to feed it. They left no bread, no broth, no kindness. A cup of water sits in the corner, cloudy, stale, with flecks of something floating on the surface. You drink it anyway, gagging as it hits your throat, desperate enough to ignore the taste. The liquid burns down your raw gullet like fire. It's not refreshment, it's reminder. A body doesn't heal just because they stop torturing it. A body doesn't forget. You try to sleep, but sleep isn't safe anymore. Every time your eyes close, you hear the chants again, echoing in your skull, words that no longer sound like prayers but curses. You feel phantom water rushing into your lungs, phantom heat blistering your souls. Your dreams are parades of faces, the priest, the bishop, the cousin who whispered lies, the crowd who cheered. They all stare, mouths open, chanting, laughing, praying, condemning. You wake in a panic, heart pounding, body convulsing in a way that will only ever be read as proof of something sinister. The scars are everywhere. Some are visible, etched into your skin like cruel signatures. Burns curling across your palms, rope marks grooved deep into your wrists, purple welts across your ribs. Others, no one will see. Lungs that wheeze after a few steps, joints that grind with every movement, a stomach that clenches against even the thought of food. And deeper still are the scars no hand can touch. The silence you can't escape, the shame you can't shed, the certainty that no matter how many times they call you saved, you'll never feel whole again. The priests say your stillness is peace. They visit once, just long enough to peer through the bars and murmur that your quietness is evidence of God's grace. They don't realize it's exhaustion, not healing. They don't see the hollow stare, the blank expression that isn't serenity but absence. They call it a miracle, because miracles are easier to market than corpses. They'll tell the town that you were cured, that the church triumphed, that your ordeal is proof of divine power. They'll leave out that you can barely stand, that you can barely think, that your voice is gone, and the people will believe them. They'll nod, cross themselves, and whisper thanks that the devil has been cast out of their village. They won't ask to see you. They won't ask why you haven't walked outside, or spoken, or prayed with them. They won't ask because they don't want to know. The story is neater if you're healed, cleaner if you're whole. safer if your silence is voluntary rather than the permanent fracture of a broken mind. You know you won't live long. Your body tells you with every cough, every spasm, every wave of dizziness that crashes over you when you try to stand. The infections will come. The hunger will eat at you. The trauma will grind down what's left of your thoughts until even breathing feels foreign. You will fade before your time. And when you do, they'll say it was the devil's last gasp, that even in death, you were proof of their sermons. But until then, you'll haunt yourself. Every scream will echo in your skull. Every chant will rattle in your ears. Every shadow will look like a priest's robe. The smell of smoke will drag you back to the coals. The sound of water will drown you all over again. The mere touch of another human hand will make your body seize with terror. You aren't healed. You're branded. They will call it a miracle. They will write your story into their ledgers as one more triumph for the church, one more example of God's light piercing darkness. They will say you walked away renewed, when in truth you will only ever crawl. And when you finally collapse for the last time, no one will remember your broken body or your ruined mind. They'll remember only the narrative. A girl once possessed, then saved. Your recovery is nothing but a myth. And myths, unlike you, never die. It was never really about the devil. That's the secret you only understand once your body is too broken to fight, when the pain dulls into something almost reflective. The exorcism wasn't war against some invisible beast clawing inside your ribs. It was war against you, against your body, your voice, your mind, daring to exist outside the boundaries they set. They dressed it up in scripture, masked it in ritual. But underneath the incense and chanting was something simple and ugly. Control. From the first accusation, you were already guilty, not of consorting with demons, but of living in a way that unsettled them. You coughed at the wrong time, spoke too boldly, asked questions that echoed too loudly. You bled, you shook, you resisted. These were not sins, but in their eyes, they were threats. And threats must be crushed. What better way to do it than in the name of God? What better excuse than Satan himself? They feared not the devil's whispers, but yours. Every rope that dug into your skin, every drop of brine forced down your throat, every psalm shouted into your ear, was less about expulsion and more about domination. They silenced you with gags, not because demons spoke through you, but because your words might. They bled you not to starve some phantom, but to weaken you until you couldn't resist. They burned you not to chase shadows, but to scar your flesh as a warning to others. This is what happens when someone steps beyond the script. The ritual was a spectacle for the crowd, yes, but it was also a lesson. Every gasp, every sob wrung from you was a sermon louder than anything the priest could preach. Look, they said. Look what happens to a woman who strays. Look what happens to a girl who mutters, who bleeds, who dares to exist without permission. The devil was a convenient costume, but the true performance was obedience. And it worked. You saw it in your brother, too afraid to defend you. You saw it in your cousin, eager to offer your name if it meant securing her inheritance. You saw it in your mother, reduced to weeping silence, too broken to resist the authority standing above her. Your suffering bent them into place as surely as it broke you. The ritual wasn't just for you. It was for them. To keep them obedient, afraid, tethered. To remind them that survival meant submission, that safety was bought through silence. The church didn't fear rebellion in armies or riots. It feared rebellion in whispers, in midwives brewing herbs, in women teaching their daughters too much, in peasants daring to think their lives might be their own. And what better weapon than possession? No one can argue with demons. No one can appeal against Satan. Once they mark you as a vessel, you're no longer human. You're evidence, your excuse, and excuses are powerful things. So your body became the battlefield, your silence became the prize, and your agony, their spectacle, became the currency of order. They broke you not because you were possessed, but because you reminded them that they weren't untouchable. You reminded them that faith is fragile, that pain can be questioned, that obedience isn't natural. It must be beaten, burned, and prayed into the skin. But here is the darker truth. Even broken, even silenced, even discarded into a cell, you are still dangerous to them, because pain leaves a trace, because scars tell stories whether you speak them or not, because your existence, marred and trembling, whispers the truth they try so hard to drown, that demons aren't real, but power is, and power is wielded by men who fear losing it. You will carry the scars for the rest of your short life, the way your lungs seize when you breathe too deep, the way your hands shake when you see a crucifix, the way your dreams fill with smoke and chanting. These are not remnants of a demon. They are remnants of control, stitched into you by those who claimed salvation as their right. And every step you take beyond this cell, every glance you offer, will remind others of what the church did in God's name. That is the thing they fear most, not the devil, but the memory of their cruelty made flesh. You weren't possessed. You were punished. The exorcism was never meant to free you. It was meant to cage you, to bind you in fear so tightly that even in release, you wouldn't dare stretch your limbs. To remind everyone watching that rebellion ends in ruin. To leave you so hollowed that even if you tried to speak again, no one would listen, because the story was already written for you. A girl once possessed, now healed. A miracle. They will keep telling that story long after you are gone. They will etch it into ledgers, preach it from pulpits, pass it down as proof that the church wrestles demons from flesh. They will point to you as victory, even as you limp, even as you choke on your own nightmares, even as you vanish young and forgotten. They will never admit what you were, a warning, but you know, and maybe, just maybe, others will see it too. In the bruises that never fade, in the quiet twitch of your eyes, in the faint tremor of your lips, they'll recognize the truth hidden under the miracle. They'll see that it was never about the devil. It was about control. The devil was never in you. That's the part no one says aloud, but it hangs in the silence after the chanting stops, in the emptiness of your cell, in the hollow ringing in your skull when the psalms fade away. The devil was never clawing through your skin, whispering from your throat, twisting your limbs into unnatural shapes. What lived in you was fear, hunger, pain. What broke you wasn't a demon's talons. It was rope, fire, and men with scripture dripping from their mouths like venom. They said they were saving your soul, but you know better now. They weren't reaching into you to pull something out. They were pressing down, crushing, reshaping, until you fit into the mold they demanded. Every bruise, every burn, every scar wasn't the sign of a battle with Satan. It was the evidence of a system making sure you understood your place. They told themselves the exorcism was holy, but it was nothing more than obedience carved into flesh. The demon was never you. The demon was them. Look at the priests. Their lips cracked from shouting, eyes bright not with divine light but with zeal. They weren't afraid of the devil. They were afraid of weakness, afraid of uncertainty, afraid of a world where women muttered at night, where seizures had no explanation, where grief spilled out as laughter or rage. They feared the cracks in their control, the moments when their rules no longer explained the chaos, and in their fear, they found a scapegoat. You, the bishop who halted the ritual, didn't save you out of mercy. He stopped it because you weren't useful anymore. You had become too still, too ruined, too boring. Your screams no longer fed the crowd. Your thrashing no longer looked like proof. You had been wrung dry of entertainment, and so the performance ended. Not because the devil was gone, but because the theater had lost its audience. They'll tell the story differently, of course. They'll say you were delivered, that the church triumphed, that your silence now, your limp, your hollow eyes, are evidence of healing. They'll call it a miracle. They'll weave it into their sermons, their ledgers, their whispered warnings to children who stray. They'll say, "This is what happens when the devil tempts you." They won't say, "This is what happens when the church does." But you'll remember. You'll remember the laughter that wasn't madness but terror bubbling out of your chest like bile. You'll remember the way your body floated in the river, dragged down by stone, your lungs begging for air while their hands held you under. You'll remember the iron burning your palms, the salt rubbed into open wounds, the cross pressed into your skin until it branded. You'll remember the faces watching, eyes wide with awe, relief in their expressions because your pain meant they were safe. You'll remember how the crowd cheered when you screamed and nodded solemnly when you went limp. You'll remember how it was never about the devil, and in remembering, you'll know the truth. The institution needed demons, so it invented them. It needed proof of God's might, so it made proof out of your suffering. It needed control, so it bent you until you broke. And once you broke, once you were silent, once you were emptied of resistance, it declared victory, not over hell, over you. Your will was the real battlefield, that trembling, stubborn thing inside you that clung to survival, even as they drowned it, starved it, beat it down, and in the end, they crushed it. They left you alive, yes, but hollow. You eat when food is placed before you. You drink when the cup touches your lips. You breathe. You exist. You occupy space. But the fire in you, the spark that laughed too loud or asked too many questions, is gone. They exorcise that, though not with holy water or psalms, with fear, with pain, with the relentless reminder that your body is theirs to bind, your mind theirs to rewrite, your voice theirs to silence. And that was always the point. The devil was never in you. The devil was the excuse. The devil was the mask they wore while breaking you. The devil was the lie that let them turn cruelty into righteousness, sadism into ritual, murder into miracle. And the worst part is, the lie will outlive you. Long after your body finally gives out, long after the scars fade into bone, they'll still be telling the story. They'll still be praising the triumph. They'll still be naming the devil that was never there. You'll be remembered as a girl who was healed. But you'll know, in the final dark, that you were only broken. You wake up, and the world is quiet. Not silent, but quiet in a way that doesn't make your stomach clench. The hum of central heating vibrates faintly through the walls. Pipes sigh with water rushing through them. The sheets are clean, soft, smelling faintly of detergent instead of mildew or blood. Your wrists ache only from the position you slept in, not from rope biting through flesh. Your throat is dry, but when you reach for the glass on your nightstand, no one stops you. No one forces salt or lye down your mouth in the name of cleansing. You drink, and the water is cold, clear, safe. A luxury so mundane you almost forget it would have been a miracle once. There's no priest muttering over you, no incense thickening the air, no crowd pressing in, eyes gleaming, waiting for you to scream. The only sound is the radiator clicking as it adjusts, the street outside muffled through double glass windows. You sit up slowly, your muscles stiff only from sleep. No welts on your back, no burns on your palms, no chains around your ankles. You are free, in ways that would have been unimaginable 6 centuries ago. And for a moment, you feel the ghost of those who weren't. Because survival isn't just strength. It isn't just luck. It's time. The difference between waking up in this bed and waking up bound to a plank in 1357 isn't your willpower or your innocence. It's the accident of being born into a world where seizures are treated with medicine, not scripture. Where menstruation is an inconvenience, not evidence of witchcraft. Where voices in the head mean a doctor's appointment, not an exorcism. You imagine explaining this room, the heating, the plumbing, the glass of water, the the locked door that locks from the inside, to someone dragged through the rituals you've read about. How would they react to the absence of fear in your daily routine? No one waiting to accuse you if you cough during Mass. No bishop weighing your screams against his schedule. No neighbor pointing to herbs in your kitchen and calling you a witch. To them, this would look like heaven. To you, it's Tuesday. It's disorienting to recognize how thin the thread of time really is. That you aren't better than them, smarter than them, holier than them, just later. That the difference between life and spectacle, between health and torture, between being seen as human or as a vessel for demons, wasn't earned. It was scheduled, but the scars linger anyway, even if they're not carved into your body. They linger in stories, in warnings passed down, in the way entire generations learn to fear their own thoughts, their own blood, their own voices. You inherit those ghosts without ever knowing their names. You carry them with you every time you hear someone laugh too loud, or see someone twitch in public, or notice how easily suspicion blooms in a crowd. The echo of the pyre still crackles under the surface of history. The smoke never really clears. You think about how fragile it is, this comfort, how central heating and running water feel permanent until a power outage strips them away. How doctors and medicine seem eternal until you realize how young antibiotics really are. How quickly certainty crumbles when fear takes its place. And you wonder if people in the 14th century thought the same thing, that their rituals, their chants, their ordeals were as permanent as stone, that what they did was inevitable, unshakable, until it wasn't. The room is warm, but the thought chills you, because it means this timeline isn't salvation. It's only a pause. A brief reprieve where knowledge outweighs superstition, where compassion occasionally outruns cruelty, but nothing guarantees it stays this way. Nothing guarantees that fear won't creep back in, wearing a different mask, whispering in new words, demanding new rituals to prove purity. You lie back against your pillow, staring at the ceiling, and the comfort of your bed feels both enormous and fragile. You survived not because you're untouchable, but because you were born into a time where your body isn't automatically a crime scene, where your laughter isn't a confession, where your silence isn't proof of a demon crouching inside your ribs. But you know better than to believe that survival is permanent. For now, though, the sheets are warm, the water is safe, the air is clean. No one is watching you for signs of deviance. No one is readying a rope or a prayer or a torch. You're alive in a world where survival isn't spectacle, and that is its own miracle. The world insists it has moved on. Doctors with degrees replace monks with chains. Antidepressants replace salt poultices. MRI scans replace whispered prayers. You walk down a street lined with glass and steel, lit by electricity, and you almost believe it. Almost believe that the age of ropes and relics, of priests screaming Latin over a convulsing body, has been locked away in history books. But echoes have long lives, and the echo of exorcism still rattles in the rafters of the modern world. They still happen. Maybe not in a cathedral surrounded by chanting monks, maybe not with iron pokers pulled from a forge, but in quieter rooms, under the shadow of belief too stubborn to die. In rural corners of the globe, people are still bound to beds. In cramped apartments, children still have oil forced down their throats. In certain churches, the ritual still exists almost unchanged. Priests shouting into faces flushed with fever or grief, convinced that pain is purification. Some end with cries of healing. Others end with silence that will never be broken again. You survived, but not all do. The medieval theater might be gone, the crowded nave, the public spectacle, but the script is still performed. Possession rebranded as disorder. Disorder repackaged as sin. The cycle repeats, dressed in new robes, updated with microphones and pamphlets. But the outcome is still the same. a body broken under the weight of someone else's certainty. And even here, in your warm bed with central heating humming, the ghosts do not let you rest. You wake from dreams of chanting you've never heard, from phantom hands pressing your chest into stone, from the suffocating press of smoke in your lungs. You wake gasping, and it takes you long minutes to remember that this is now, not then, that your wrists are free, that the cross on the wall is decoration, not weapon, that your breath is your own. The trauma lingers like an inheritance, even if it isn't written into your family tree. It's written into the species. Centuries of bodies tied down, women accused, children drowned to test their innocence. It leaves a mark deeper than parchment or ash. Every time someone praises the good old days, you feel it in your bones. You know what those days really held: cold floors, hot irons, the stink of sweat and fear and rot. You know that survival then meant silence, compliance, or a miracle so rare it was just another myth. You're haunted by the absurdity as much as the horror, because what killed wasn't just cruelty, but stupidity. The conviction that sneezing too loudly or laughing at the wrong time was enough to damn you. The insistence that left-handedness was evidence of evil. The certainty that epilepsy was the devil rattling bones instead of a misfiring brain. You picture the demon they were so sure of. Confused, bemused, watching the chaos unfold, shaking its head while priests screamed Latin for 6 hours straight, demanding it depart. And in that strange, awful vision, you laugh. Because sometimes the only way to survive memory is to recognize the farce wrapped inside the tragedy. You imagine that demon, baffled. This girl? Really? All she's got is a fever and some bad dreams, and you're dousing her in brine, bleeding her dry, and singing hymns off-key until she faints. You're doing my work for me. And maybe that's the truest horror of all. The devil never needed to be real. Humanity was perfectly capable of inventing its own tortures without any help from hell. The medieval world is gone, but you see its shadows every time panic replaces compassion. Every time difference is punished instead of understood. A child rocking in a classroom, a woman screaming at shadows in a hospital ward, a man hearing voices on the street corner. How quick the gaze of the crowd sharpens, how quickly whispers return. We don't chant in Latin anymore, but we still call it madness. We still fear what we cannot explain. We still reach for control before understanding. You survived, barely, and that survival brands you as witness. You carry the memory of chains, even when your wrists are free, of holy water that scalded instead of saved, of bruises misread as miracles. And when the world starts to talk wistfully about simpler times, golden ages, the purity of the past, you know enough to bite down the bile rising in your throat, because simpler was never safer. Golden was never gentle. The past was not pure. It was pyres and knives and endless screams mistaken for proof of the divine. The next time someone sighs about the good old days, you'll remember the truth. You'll remember the ropes biting into your flesh. You'll remember the coals blistering your feet. You'll remember the hours of chanting that tore your voice raw, until you screamed in Latin you didn't understand just to give them what they wanted, just to make it stop. You'll remember that all you had at the end was a bruised body, a mug of sour beer forced into your hands as consolation, and a demon so bewildered it may have laughed along with you. History is a haunting. It clings, it mutters, it breathes through walls we pretend are solid. The exorcism didn't end in the Middle Ages, it just shifted shape, and if you're lucky, if you're careful, you'll never feel its claws again. But you'll always carry the echo, always hear the chant in the back of your skull, always know the truth that history tries so hard to smother. The devil was never the one tormenting you. It was the people who swore they were saving you.